I would just like to thank number one right now, Michael Chapman, a 2023 graduate of Central High School, for being the technician in charge of all these things that have happened. So if you get a chance, thank Michael Chapman. By the way, just had through that slideshow, we are going to your program, going to be hearing part of Coach Brown's past. Last night and bought this. And I want Tim Penman, Brenda Penman, and I want Ron Brown to know that I did not steal his pen from his. It's here in living color. A couple things. We are going to. Tim Brown gave us short amount of time. So we're going to see what short looks like. Okay, as far as speaking goes. But if you look at this in the Ron Brown game in his life in all of 72, 73, a double shifting year, I have a clue who the guy was. And a couple years prior, I watched a Ron Brown team play a Oklahoma team, but some pretty good athletes at that time. And the Ron Brown team kicked the crap out of that Oklahoma team for years. I grew a respect for that man only because I was watching him, his demeanor on the bench, and how his athletes played the game. That's a continual message through 56, 57 years, which I know many of you have been involved with, if not part, but all of those years. Ron Brown, people ask me, family, if you watch this family in the last month do what they've done, let alone with the masterful part of the eulogy. If you did not get one, make sure you get one. This family expanded from that family to his other family to his international family. His family. For me, friendships. To have a friendship like you all have and to have a friendship like Tim. He hired a guy in 1974 that made one basket during his whole high school career. One basket. So there must have been some faith and trust, and he saw things in me that I did not have a clue about. But because of my relationship with Ron Brown, I got to believe in myself and even learn free continuity for a 2-year period. So faith. People ask me about Ron Brown and faith. If you were walking around before games, he always assigned the prayer before the games, always. And he gave young men the responsibility to pray with his teammates. And if faith wasn't strengthened by the people that surrounded him, it had to have been strengthened by this beautiful bride he met from England. And her faith and her amazing influence on Ron Brown just impressed me to no end, to no end. And so when people ask me about faith, I said yes. Jesus said, and this is Tim Gilmore paraphrase, but Jesus said, number one, love God, love my Father. Did Ron Brown love God, love the Father? Yes, he did. Number one. Number two, Jesus said, love friends. Love friends. Did Ron Brown love friends? Oh my, that's absolutely no question. And the last thing Jesus did was he gave examples of servanthood. He said, I did not come here to be served, but I came here to serve. Ask yourself when you're hearing things in the next couple minutes, did Ron Brown serve? Oh my goodness, did he serve? Wow. His servanthood went beyond, even with basketball officials. He had such a love and respect and passionate admiration for them, even though I know that there were coaches in the audience, Larry, Ed, Trevor, Ben, myself. I had to leave the bench during my tenure there to get up in the stand so I did not influence a technical foul, which you will hear about. It is now my honor and privilege. First speaker is a good friend of mine, good friend of ours. He is a 2008 graduate and basketball player, Mr. Mark McHugh. Pastor Mark McHugh.
I'm told we're only supposed to be here for an hour today, so let's get down to praying together and we'll get started. Loving God, we are here today to remember and to grieve the loss of a life no longer lived, but also to hold fast to the hope of your resurrection life. We're here today to share stories, prayers, words that will inevitably come up short of saying what it is we all want to say, but we will use them still. Here today to hold the Brown family in this time of great loss and to not look away from their grief. It's the cost of their deep love for who Ron was as a husband, a dad, a grandpa, a friend. We're here today to thank Janet for her love of Ron for all these years and to honor Ron's love back to her. It was a bond that allowed Ron to live such an inspiring story of loving others. And so we ask, God, that your comfort and peace would be with Janet in these challenging days of adjustment to life without her lifelong companion. But mostly we're here today to say thank you, God. Mostly we are here today to say thank God for God if God made Ron Brown, and you did. And there's a whole gym full of people here today who are grateful you did. We're grateful to have known him. We're grateful to have been coached by him. We are grateful to have received his love in difficult seasons, his perspective in hard moments when so many of us needed perspective, and Coach was the one who had it. We're grateful for the ways that he served his family and this community, his impact on Centralia and thousands of young people over the decades through teaching and coaching and just being a second to none darn good human being. His life is evidence of a life supremely well lived. And now, God, in our grief and in our gratitude, we entrust Coach into your eternal care, knowing that in your arms is the kind of comfort and peace and ultimate satisfaction we long for, and that Coach now knows in full. We trust that Coach is with you, that right this moment he is safe, that he is well cared for, that right now he has his every need met, that his best moments on this earth are nothing compared to what he is experiencing now with you. So we say again, thank God for God if God made Coach Ron Brown, and you did. And we're grateful today, and we're sad today, and we celebrate him today, and as we do, we trust in the power of your resurrection hope. It's in that hope that we pray. In Jesus' name, and God's people said, amen. Well, as Tim said, my name is Mark McHugh, and I played for Coach from 2004 to 2008, and just such a great honor to be able to stand up here and to say a word about him today, a word about one of my heroes. But first, to Janet, to Alyssa, to Tim, to Julie, to David, to the entire Brown family, thank you for sharing Ron with us all these years. Thank you for sharing your husband, Janet, your dad, to the family, your grandpa, And while none of us can fully understand certainly the grief that you feel, we know that within it is that deep, deep love for the human who you knew better than any of us, and who you loved better than any of us. The human who we all found was really easy to love ourselves. I was thinking this week about how fitting it is that this service today is in Ron's house, because like so many of you probably, I remember the first time I came in this gym, it was through that door over there, and Coach Brown was standing right by that door over there, and I was probably, I don't remember how old, 8, and it was Saturday morning, and it was time for Saturday basketball. And I remember hanging on every word that Coach Brown would say to you as a kid when he'd talk about dribbling the ball up the driveway while the car rolled down it, or he'd encourage y'all to shoot 500 shots a day. Anybody actually do it? Like so many of you, I remember just Coach's lessons. He had a focus on the parts of the game of basketball that most people overlooked. The details of footwork, the intricacies of ball handling, how to avoid a baseline drive. My goodness, that was... Go down the list, and Coach would create a connection to the history of Centralia basketball so that his newest players would immediately become stewards of this tradition very early on in their lives. The effect was, you grew up in Ron's house, you knew that you were part of a bigger family tree, a richer history, a larger story than your story. But the crazy thing about Coach, though, is that he was one of the best basketball coaches around, and he was peerless in that regard. But he was even a better person. And this gym today is full of people because he was an even better person. He was big-hearted and compassionate. He was kind. He was always hopeful. He treated everyone with respect as if they were his own kids. His least favorite day of the year was the day when he had to tell people that they hadn't made the team. And I remember thinking Coach took that practice day as seriously as he ever took a big game. And I think he always took Gil along with him to deliver the news. He hated it because he cared so deeply for everyone who came into his house as if they were his family. Coach also had a silly side to him. He'd come in after a big win, and he'd do this little 1960s, 70s dance thing where he'd move his shoulders kind of awkwardly, and then he'd make this little celebratory noise. I don't know if he did this for everybody, but he did it for our years, and he'd just say, you, like he was chirping away. Did anybody remember that? All right, a few of you. All right. He had a way of connecting with people who were 60 years younger than him and having fun with kids, which is a really hard thing to do the older you get. Coach wasn't perfect, of course, and if you ever rode in a car with him, you knew what I'm talking about. He had a Ford minivan. I believe it was a Ford Freestar minivan, a purple minivan. I swear I almost perished in that minivan a half a dozen times. But Coach, he was as close to perfect in a kid's eyes as anyone could be. My favorite thing about him was that he knew how to show up for people. He showed up for people better than anyone. I remember between my sophomore and junior year, I had an eye injury playing AAU basketball one summer, and it left me blind in an eye. And in the wake of that injury, I was devastated, I was depressed, I was anxious, and I'll never forget looking out the window of my house as that old purple Ford Freestar minivan pulled into the driveway. And then the doorbell rang. And on the other side of the door was the coach that I'd grown up to love, and he didn't say much, nothing at first. Instead, he just opened up his arms, and he wrapped me in them, and he gave me a big hug, as if to say, without saying it, that I wasn't alone. That day, he took a despairing kid, and he gave me a little bit of hope as he reminded me in his own way that even though this felt like the worst thing anyone could ever go through, it would not be the last thing. It never would. Coach then proved that he meant it by meeting me here in this gym at 6:45 every morning for 3 months with his patented orange Fanta soda, half drank. The guy didn't drink coffee, he just drank orange soda. And he would teach me to love the game all over again for the second time in my life. And that was Coach. He was always hopeful, always encouraging, always patient, always believing in your best, always holding a mirror up to you as a person and telling you about the truth of who you were, that you had real God-given worth and potential, and he was going to tell you about it. Always meeting you on your worst day after a tough loss or a personal tragedy or your parents were divorced or a sobering injury, whatever it was in your life, and reminding you as only he could that the worst thing was never the last thing. And I imagine that that would be a word that Coach Brown would want us all to be reminded of today. That today, the worst thing is not the last thing, not even death. Sometimes when you hear people talk about Coach, you hear them call him a legend, which reminds me always of that line from Sandlot when they say, heroes get remembered, legends never die. Legends never die. And then I think about how even though Coach isn't here with us today, he still is here with us today in a way. I think about how we're still here in this house that Ron built, still a part of his story, still carrying on his little quirks, his little life lessons, his little traditions, his little ways of mastering not only the game of life, but of basketball, but even more importantly, the game of life. So if it's true that heroes get remembered, but legends never die, then the good news is that we'll see Coach Brown again soon. Because as he said, the worst thing isn't the last. And as someone else said, legends never die. So until then, we say thank you, Coach, for living a life worth truly living. We'll see you soon. We'll miss you a lot. And we'll always remember. But until then, you.
Wow. 1963. I heard this name a lot, and I can't wait to hear the words shared by one of the first ones under Coach Brown's tutelage, Mr. Rob Minall.
Thank you to the Brown family for inviting me to participate today. I'll start by saying that Ron Brown was a constant, consequent member of my circle, my family, for more than 60 years. And certainly second to my father in terms of influence over my life. That sounds like a sports cliche, but it's true for me. I'd like to reveal a couple little snapshots maybe of Ron's life and things that I interacted with him that will add a little texture and some color to his life and your understanding. The first is going to that first basketball practice in November of 1960 as a 6 foot, 150-pound, self-conscious 15-year-old and meeting Ron Brown for the first time. And then subsequently, Ron shagging balls while we practiced on my jump shot. And we should have practiced a lot more. And then for those of you who are under age 70, you never got a chance to play with Ron when he was at the peak of his physical skills. And so let me say, he was fast, he was a very good shooter, he was a creative passer, and above all, he was a smart player. And that's how he taught basketball as well. In November 1961, late November, there was another event, but it was a much sadder event. 4 of our basketball players were in a car train wreck. And Jim Martin, who was one of the best athletes in the group, was killed on the spot. Gordon Stafford was partially paralyzed for the rest of his life. That was truly the first time most of us ever faced tragedy. And it was terrible. And at that moment, Ron Brown became more than a coach, became a psychiatrist, a counselor, and tried to maintain or restore our fragile emotions as 15 and 16-year-old kids. We lost every game that year. But the next year we won our first 6 non-league games, and to go to January 1963, we beat Battleground on our home floor for the first league victory. And it was a celebration, but later that night there was another celebration. Alyssa was born that evening, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And then I jumped to 1966 in June when Gordon Stafford graduated with my sister's high school class. Ron Brown and a couple of other teachers went to Gordon's house every afternoon to tutor him, to help him catch up and to enable him to graduate in 1966. And that was a community happening. We were so happy to see that happen. Then a few more quick snapshots. One is just a few days after Alyssa was born, before basketball practice, Ron came and said, "Hey, let's go over to the hospital and see the baby." And we jumped in the little British convertible car and went over to the hospital. I don't know what Janet thought about it, but I thought it was kind of cool. Then advance a few more years to, I think, late October 1981. Ron called me on Saturday morning, said, "How'd you like to go to the USC Husky football game?" And I said, "Yeah." So meet me at Heck Ed. So I went to the University of Washington, and Detlef Schrempf was in his first year as a player with the Huskies. Paul Cody was starting center for the football team, so it was a big day for Centralia sports. And now I mentioned this event because as we got ready to leave, and it was very cold and very windy that day, Ron said, "There's a couple of black garbage bags over there, grab them." I didn't really know what he wanted them for, but when we got to this football stadium, we were on the open end, the bleachers, the wind was howling. We took those big black garbage bags and spread them out, stepped into them to keep from freezing to death during that game. And so Ron didn't mind looking foolish in front of 55,000 people. And then I remember a game in 1964 or 1965. I was sitting in the student section across from the bench, and Ron jumped up and he was going to go after the referee. This would have ended the story by him not having any technical fouls. But Tom Burchett, assistant coach at the time, jumped up in front of him and got in the way, so that didn't happen. So we can repeat that story that he never got a technical foul. As I wind this down, I want to quote 2 additional Centralia High School graduates. One is Judge David Draper from my high school class in '63, and he said this: "Ron Brown was an amazing role model." And Bob Blanchard, who played basketball and baseball, and I think about 1973, said, "Ron Brown taught me to be a competitor without being a jerk." Those are 2 fine things that can be said about a man and a coach. I'll close by saying that Ron helped me learn to be a good team member, how to be a mature, contributing, positive man and father. And I thank you, Coach. I miss you.
Okay, now we go to 1979. The Bobs. Bob Peters and Bob Wallen. My pleasure. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, I'm not sure how to follow all that, but I want to thank Coach Gilmore first, because you were part of that whole ride that we had back in the day. But first of all, on behalf of Bob and myself, we'd like to express our heartfelt condolences to the Brown family. and thank them for the opportunity to speak today. It is a pleasure and honor for us to share some of the memories of Coach Brown, and we know there was a lot of people who could do that, so we've talked a lot about this. So,
yeah, hey, thanks, Pete. And me also, I'd like to share my condolences to the family. I can use my coaching voice. This is not a problem. Hello. I'd much rather do that anyway. I feel more comfortable. I just want you to know how humbled I am to be honored with the opportunity to talk about Coach Brown. The real challenge today is, how do you express all the things about Coach Brown in 4 minutes? Really? Or I guess that's probably overtime. It's supposed to be 3. I'm wasting time right now. He had so many great attributes. So for our sake today, the two of us, we're going to talk about Coach Brown as a coach. He was our coach, and we're going to focus on that time when he was our coach. 56 years as a head coach, is that correct? 56 years. Can you imagine that? I coached for 32, and 56 does not register one single bit. It's so impressive, and the impact he had on this community in 56 years is unmatched in this state and maybe in the whole country. But with 56 years, that means he had 56 teams. And what we do know for sure is no team is exactly the same, ever. And so he had to come up with a plan, 56 separate teams over the years, and make them do as well as they possibly could. Well, 45 years ago, and I can't believe I'm in 45 years, Coach Brown had a group of stubborn, cocky knuckleheads with a little bit of talent show up for his first day of practice. That group would present many challenges to Coach Brown and his coaching staff. And I got Gilmore over here just waiting to pounce.
well, as we talked about that, 45 years ago is a long time, but I want to add a little bit about this team. We actually started to get molded in the 7th grade. There was 6 of us that met for the first time. We all came from different grade schools, and the best thing about that, the 6 of us stayed together through all of that, adding a few pieces along the way. As I reflect on our team and how Coach influenced our lives, I think about the growth that he was able to accomplish in each of us. And we weren't easy to grow at times. We had our own little mindset. We always knew he cared for us. He made us part of the Tiger basketball culture he had developed. Each and every one of us has been part of that, and that's amazing. As each season progressed, he continued to mold us and push us. And as a result of his tireless work, we did become the 1979 state AA basketball champions. But the best part of that, well, yeah, thank you. We'll do that again, yeah. I know Bob and I can always take another cheer because we would use that all the time, but I appreciate that. What was the amazing thing to me, and we both coached a lot longer, everybody did, that team featured 8 seniors, and we'll talk a little bit, who had put their egos and fun-loving attitudes aside and believed everything Coach Brown taught us on and off the floor, and has led to lifelong things we've done, and truly amazing.
I should have known technicals had already been talked about. But if you know my history as a player, it's probably something I better touch on. The fact that Coach Brown never had a technical in his career, to me, is mind-boggling. The fact that every article I've ever read about Coach's career makes reference to that. That's how unusual it is. It just doesn't happen. There had to be one idiot ref out there that was going to ruin this. There had to be one moment where Gilmore's behind and Coach gets the tee or something like that. It blows my mind away. When I talk to people that aren't from this area and I talk about my coach and I say, yeah, 56 years in one particular school, can you imagine that? And he never had a technical foul. Nobody believes that. And I know you're probably going to hear it from the other guys too, but you got to touch on that. That has to be talked about a little bit. Even in the most intense and pressure-packed moments, I mean, 4 overtimes. Overtime. There's so many games that it was so intense and the gyms are packed, the pressure's mounting, and he always was under control and poised. You know, Coach taught me a lot. I never figured that part out.
Coach didn't get any tees, but most of all of us that played for him, you knew he had a competitive edge. As I said earlier, we had kind of a group that had their own ways of doing things. But we were talking earlier, I remember a time, and I was going to use a different word, but I'll just use this. Coach had a great way to get our attention. And this game we were playing at Timberline, our senior season, I think a couple of players weren't with us that day, and we won't even get into that story. That'll be later. But we, at halftime, probably playing one of our worst games. And we were pretty quiet walking in the locker room. And all of a sudden, I think we sat down, and kaboom! Coach Brown broke a clipboard. And everybody was silent, not sure what happened. And he, in his own emphatically way, explained to us what we did wrong in the first half, explained what we were doing right in the second half, addressed how poorly we played in a I'll just say, inspired motivational speech, because I won't get into the dwells of it, but it was unbelievable. And as I believe we came back and won the second half, if I'm not mistaken. So he always did things in the right way at the right time. And that moment sticks out, and I think it had a big turning point in their season. So even though he didn't get tees, he knew where to kind of get some, open a can of you-know-what, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it was better than all right. It was awesome. I was jacked. It was great. And we did. We played lights out the second half. We've talked about Coach's composure, how he never had a tee. He was a gentleman. He was way more composed than our team was. So I guess we'll talk about it. We weren't very composed, especially me. There were plenty of technical fouls in our games, and Coach wasn't proud of it. He wasn't happy either. About halfway through the season, we're playing a home game here. The crowds were big in those days. Capital was a good team, and we were playing them here, and we played well, but somehow, this is just a small part of the story. We had a 10-point lead with about 2 minutes to go, and we frittered that away. We just imploded. And the next thing you know, with about 10 seconds to go, actually about 15 seconds to go, 20 seconds, it doesn't matter. We're down by 1. How did we do that in such a quick period of time? Now, the story I'm going to tell you right now is the Reader's Digest version, because we're on a time limit. If you want the long version, I'll see you at Dick's, and we'll share the whole thing. But somehow, with 10 seconds to go, I was standing on that free throw line. We're down by 1. The place is going nuts. You know that situation. You're a little kid in the driveway, and you're dreaming about, I'm going to make the game-winning free throw. I'm going to clutch up. I'm going to tell you what, I never had that dream. That was my nightmare. I did not want to be the guy up there. I did not want to be the guy shooting that ball. Well, I know, I totally get it. But anyway, fortunately, it just nicked the rim, but I did miss it. And there's this mad scramble on the court because we had time to get a rebound, maybe get fouled again. Hopefully it was somebody else. Or make a lay-in, and the ball's getting batted around. It's a scrum, and then the ball rolls out over here out of bounds. The referee says Capital's ball. I'm standing right about here. I'm just kind of processing, what has just happened in the last 5 or 10 minutes of my life? And I'm sure Gil's got some smarter answer than I have, but for some reason that ball rolled back towards me. Unfortunately. Well, I was processing, and then I decided the best idea right then was to kick that ball. And I kicked it off that wall, and it's true, it landed up in where the band used to be, over there in the top. You know how when you play baseball, and if you hit a ball and you hit it good, you don't feel it hit the bat? I did not feel that ball hit my foot. Unfortunately, I hit it good. But I feel sorry for my mom. It was a pretty embarrassing moment. Bottom line is, game got over. I went into that locker room real fast, didn't talk to anybody, grabbed my gear, went home, and I sat down at the table at the house. Because I knew I pushed it. I went past the limits there. Sat down, and trust me, I'm not a letter writer, but I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to Coach Brown. And And I talked about three things that I knew I crossed the line. Number two, I still wanted to be on the team. And number three, if you didn't want me on the team and you thought the team was better off if I wasn't there, that I was okay with that. I would understand that, and you would never hear another word from me. Well, anyway, I knew the coaches always went to Denny's after the game. So I jumped back in the rig, and I hustled down to Denny's. Sure enough, it might have been the orange truck. I can't remember what rig it was, but I knew what rig he was driving. So I ran over there across the field, and I put it in behind the windshield wiper on his window. And I headed out. It was a long weekend. That was a Friday. It was a really long weekend in the Wallen household. Monday was a long day at school. I stayed away from Coach. I didn't go near him. About the time in the school rolled around, he called for a meeting. It was just me and him. We sat down and we talked about a lot of things, but he finally says, "Are you ready to come back to this team?" I said, "You bet, Coach. I'm ready. I'm ready to go to work." He says, "No, that's not what I'm talking about. Are you ready to put the team goals in front of your selfish interests from here on out?" Wow, boom. You just hit me in the face, pal. That woke me up. I said, I can do that. I can definitely do that. There were no technical fouls the rest of the year. That was a pretty good ending. I'm not done yet. I gotta finish this. I have to finish this. Because that isn't the story. The moral of the story is about Coach Brown. And the thing about Coach is he never gave up on kids. He was willing to work through the hard times because he believed that he could make a difference. And that was an example. That's why I kind of told that whole thing. And that was just one of the lessons I learned from Coach Brown that I tried to carry with me through my coaching career. I hope Coach realized, and I think he did, how many positive impacts he had in my life.
Please make sure you meet with him and get the rest of the story. I'm sure there's some 79 members that'll share the whole thing, but it was a beauty. It was a great kick, too, I'll tell you that. Speaking of coaching, and I'm going to read because I want to going into coaching was a choice I made because the influence Coach Brown had on my life. The lessons he taught us and the values he instilled in us was truly a gift. From the first time I met him at 8 years old, eyes wide open, I know Mark mentioned that, until the last time we spoke at his bedside. His love and faith in helping others always inspired me. That's the biggest thing he ever did. He was always a smile on his face, and he was always willing to help people. I knew I would never be able to match what he did as a coach, but if I could follow some of the traits he exemplified, I'd do okay. And we often talked about how simple the game of basketball is played if it's taught and played properly. And that's the values he instilled in all of us Tiger basketball players that played under him. Simply, perfection wasn't always his goal. It was just to do it the right way. Heck, one of the coach's strongest strengths was, and you ever played for him, he would put guys in the right position to make yourself team successful. Heck, we talked about earlier, Paul Cody, which names were mentioned early, 6'3", 230-pounder. I think he played point guard more than you and I did. Yeah, he was happy. So, but Coach put it unheard of back in the 70s that a football player would be handling the ball. But when you saw Paul dribble, I don't think anybody get around him. As Wallen said yesterday to me, well, we had scat backs on it. They were going to steal it from us every time. So Coach made a good decision, and what he did, just put people in positions to be successful. It was always about the team. And I mean, that is why I did what I did for my professional career. I will be forever grateful for all the lessons he taught me on and off the court, and it's something that will live with me forever, and hopefully I've instilled that to the family.
We were both at that football game, that USC football game in the rain, and there were a lot of trash bags there. That was an amazing game, and the weather was unbelievable. Small world. Just to close this out, a few weeks ago I was talking to Hal Gronseth, and I told him how fortunate I felt I was to be surrounded by the mentors we had at the school when I was going to high school. And God knows I needed some mentors. Don LeBaron, coach and a teacher. Mort Gronseth, the AD and kind of a second dad to me. A young Tim Gilmore, These were people I always looked up to, and I knew I could go to just for any kind of question I might have. However, Coach Brown was the tip of that mentor spear. He was the guy. And it never ended. He was always there, and you knew he was always there for you. So, for that, Coach, I'm forever grateful. Thank you, brother.
Bob trying to get one up on me. I've actually been chosen to close, and I would be remorse if I didn't mention how Coach included my family personally in his life and his family's life. Coach always made our family feel like his family. I know we're not the only ones in here, but I was blessed to have both my daughters, Hillary and Bailey, work numerous summer camps for him. My son, Christian, was a ball boy for many years and ended up playing for him. We were one of 12 father-son combos, and we both take pride in that. And it's an amazing thing what he did, and I am blessed to have been part of the Brown family, and I really, truly will hold that to till my day's done. Coach's ties run deep. A perfect example of this is a quote he wrote to me in the book that we'll be talking about later, and it sticks with me. He wrote in there, "Pete, it matters not how long you live, but how." And I would ask everybody to hold that value too, because that's what Coach Brown lived by. It was amazing. It was about how you did, and I would love you to hold that. As I wrap up, the last thing I want to do, and this is something the coach instilled in me about teamwork, I would ask any members of the 1979 state championship to please stand right now so we may honor Coach Brown. Don't be bashful, guys. I know you're here. There's a few of us, and most of us are here. And if you guys would please stay standing, please, thanks. I'm going to point over here to the young man named Greg Leduc. I'm not sure where he has it hidden, but he has the net with him that we cut down 45 years ago in heck-ed position. And that net will forever bond us with Coach Brown. As we said earlier, it took a bunch of guys that had some egos and stuff and put us together. It came out in a golf tournament 3 years ago. We took a picture. You saw it up there. This shining light that Coach Brown had once Greg pulled it out of his pants. Same way. That's Greg hiding that stuff there. But that's how he does that. But it's all about team. It wasn't about Bob and I talking. It's about everybody that was here. And it looks like most of them came. And I'm honored, we are honored to represent you guys because that was his first state championship. And as I truly do close, I say this, thank you, Coach Brown. Until we meet again, rest in peace. Love forever and always, 1979 state AA basketball champions. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Next, we go to 1987 and 1999. Mr. Chris Thomas and Mr. Sam Agnew. Welcome.
Dick's Brewery usually closes at 10, but I think with all the stories and the unedited versions that we need, they're opening at 3, and we might have to go a long ways past 10 o'clock tonight to get all the stories out.
Yeah, I think we want to gonna try to keep it short to save some time for you, Coach Gill, because we know you're going to be up here for a while.
So father of our fraternity, that father figure, you've heard that several times. That was the quote that was in the Chronicle. I'm so glad that they use that. And I'm proud to be a member of that fraternity here today. I feel like I joined it in 4th grade. That was that 78, 79 team, and my brother Mike was on that team. And sophomore, I was 4th grader, Saturday basketball, and sophomore Jay Roberts was my coach. And how cool was that to be a 4th grader, 5th grader, 6th grader, and have him see you in the stands? That was the fraternity that Coach created. Sorry. 4th grade, you know, I met my best friend that year, and it was competitive. You know, we were a rivalry, and Coach wanted that to be a rivalry, and Gary and I carry that rivalry together on the golf course today. And the competitiveness that he instilled in us. He wanted Saturday basketball to be competitive, and it was fierce. And he would set that last week up as the championship game in Saturday basketball. It was always the last week. And 8th grade, that was your last year, last chance Saturday basketball. And, you know, sometimes we got a little too competitive. And so Gerald Waring, I want to apologize, because it was that championship game. He had a breakaway lay-in, and I might have given him a little nudge when he was going up for that breakaway layup in the championship game. And the bleachers at the middle school were really close, and so Gerald, I apologize for that in front of everybody here today. Coach Brown took me aside at that point and gave me that little father figure talk, because our parents didn't go to Saturday basketball then. We just showed up and played, and Coach was that father figure like you've heard about, like Mark said. And so to the family, again, like everybody said, when we were putting the book together, Jared Stewart, who is really the inspiration of this book, when we were putting it together, that term, father of our fraternity, that's when that came up. And so we just thought about it to thank Elisa, David, Timmy, Julie, Janet, the entire family. We know what we gained from Coach as a father that you gave to us. And it is such a privilege that we were able to do that and have a little bit of peace of Coach Brown as that father figure in our life.
Good afternoon. My name is Sam Agnew. I am the class of 1999. I feel honored and blessed to be here. I want to thank the Brown family for allowing me to come up here. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna talk a little bit about love, provide a little roadmap of my history and time and some memories, and then close it all up with love too. So forgive me if I get a little choked up in advance.
I set the tone for you.
Okay. The older I get, the more I realize the essence of life is love and unconditional love. Unconditional love is a selfless act of loving someone without expecting anything in return. I'm going to repeat that. Unconditional love is a selfless act of loving someone without expecting anything in return. Coach Brown, he did that for all of us. Through all the years he coached and taught and the legacy he left, underneath it all was love. He respected all of us and loved us unconditionally. We wanted to work hard for him and be the best we could at playing the game we all loved called basketball. Coach Brown truly cared for his players. In fact, I didn't even realize Coach Brown had a family until high school. He was so committed to developing young men. Every small and big action impact he made through his coaching touched each of us in different ways, but we all knew we were loved and cared for Coach Brown. My great-grandfather played basketball in 1901. There's a picture of it in the book. My uncle, Dick Lytle, was a student in Coach Brown's first teaching year at Centralia High School. As a kid growing up in Centralia, all I wanted to do was play basketball for Coach Brown. I wanted to be a Tiger. I can recall being a 7- and 8-year-old kid going to the high school on a Friday night to watch J.J. Berger and Jason Stewart. I can remember being in 4th grade and in 1991 and getting out of school early to go watch the Tigers compete in the state championships at the Tacoma Dome, watching Lewis Lofton, Jared Stewart, Bryson Fass, Braden Fuller, and Tracy Thomas. The 1991 team was legendary for me. I can recall going to Saturday basketball and seeing all these guys in the gym. They were our role models. My younger brother and sister, Paul and Ashley, and our neighbors, Noel and Drew Conrad, we would pretend to be them while playing hoops in our driveway. Most kids wanted to be like Michael Jordan. We all wanted to be anyone from the 1991 team, and I always wanted to be Lewis. By the way, how about Saturday basketball? What an impact, Saturday basketball. What an impactful youth program led by Coach Brown. There was nothing better than seeing Coach Brown rolling into the gym with his orange soda drink. Yesterday, I was reminiscing with my good buddy, Jason Stum. Jason and I were talking about what an honor it was to get a call from Coach Brown in the summer to go play in Summer League. And what that meant for us was we got a ride in the station wagon. And as Ben Danielson reminded me this morning, if you got there early enough, you could sit in the back seat to face out. As seniors, we would beg Coach Brown to let us wear the old school warm-ups, especially the ones with the bell bottoms. We were allowed to wear them twice that year. We went 2-0 against WF West my senior year, thanks to those warm-ups and Coach Brown's ability to not get rid of anything. There would be times when Coach Brown would call a timeout at the end of a quarter, end of a half, or at the end of the game. He would bring us all together. He would call out the play Bearcat. We all smiled and licked our chops because we knew we would be able to get an easy bucket to end the quarter or half or game. His consistency was unmatched. A few years ago, Coach Brown and his sons and a few other men joined me for a game in Allen Fieldhouse, the birthplace of college basketball. That is a memory that will stick with me forever. That was 5 years ago. I'm so grateful we took the time to do that for your dad. You know, every human wants to feel meaningful and purposeful in their life. Coach Brown gave us an opportunity to have purpose and meaning in our lives during a pivotal time as young teenagers. I am so grateful to God for blessing me with Coach Brown in my life. He gave me the greatest gift of all, and that is unconditional love to others.
So we were asked to just talk a little bit today about this book and the process. And again, Jared Stewart, really the inspiration. Check out the inside of the book. But as we did this, it took a long, long time to get this book together and get it to print. And I think it's because it exemplified two things about Coach. Two things. First, his strive for perfection. You know, some of the we would find photos, and we knew where they were from, but we would take drives, and if the photo didn't match the way it looked, he didn't want to use it. And we would drive in the car and go to a gym, and if the photo looked like the gym, then we could put that in the book because he was just so meticulous about how we did that. And we checked the spellings of names. Oh my gosh, looking in annuals, checking with people's fathers and their brothers and whatnot. And unfortunately, the book comes out, we're looking through it, and one of the first things we did was find a misspelled name. Now, we had talked to this player's father, had looked through the edits. His uncles had looked at it. We had looked in annuals and it's spelled this way. And Coach was ready to send not distribute the book. Let's reprint. We'll figure out a way to pay for it. But because people love Coach so much, we were so thankful that Connor Wasson is actually ready to change the spelling of his name to Connor because it was wrong in the book. So when Coach found that out, he was like, okay, we don't have to get it reprinted. But that was the love that he installed in his, the program and the family. And so that's the second thing. He was a perfectionist, and he loved that process. All of the conversations, everybody that had a part in putting this book together, I hope you just know how much he loved the phone calls, the meetings, getting it together. And Jared and I, towards the end, we're getting ready. Hey, we got to get this thing to print. We really feel like he never wanted to finish this book, just the project, because of the joy and the memories and the connections that it brought this program together and created that fraternity.
Yeah, so if you'd like to have a copy, Randy Garland in the back has them available afterwards. We've already raised thousands of dollars for the basketball program, and all the proceeds of the book sales go to that. And Chris is going to kind of touch a little bit on the golf tournament. We got an annual golf tournament. I'll leave it to you, Chris.
So we decided we needed to pay for the book, And then we didn't want, Coach didn't want any money. We wanted all the money to go to the, so Sam and I were talking, and he said, hey, let's have a golf tournament. We'll pay for that. And we've done it now for a few years. And he loved the connections. That's all he cared about when we were talking about the golf tournament. Who's going to be there? Are we going to call this person, get him there? And just sitting there afterwards and connecting with everybody, he just loved that. And so we're doing, all the money has always gone to the basketball program, but he's really excited. He is really excited. I know he still is. That this year, for the tournament, we're having it on September 7th. If you want to be involved, get a hold of me. But the money is going to go this year to Centralia Youth Sports to really try to re-energize the youth sports program and the Saturday basketball program that you've heard so much about. We're really excited about this year. So there you go. Final story about the book and the golf tournament is Jared and Sam and I would talk to Coach, and each year we wanted to do something different. We were like, Coach, do you think you'd come this year and maybe give an your favorite starting 5, or maybe your all-time top 12, or maybe even at least a decades team, something that we can promote and get people there. And Coach would never. He was like, no way. He was reluctant. He would never point a figure, never individualize anybody.
I mean, speak for yourself. I was starting 3. No, just kidding. No. Well, I think, to close, know this. The great thing about Coach Brown was he got the best out of all of us. He believed in us. He taught us basketball. He taught us, how to be men. He elevated us and made us better players and better people. And I'm just so grateful for him. And I'm also really grateful for Coach Gill and Coach Mollerstoon. You talk about that tree. These are 3: Coach Brown, Mollerstoon, Gilmore. Those were 3 men in my life that were pivotal, being a teenager growing up. So I'm really just so grateful.
So just one final story about Coach. A few weeks ago, Timmy gave us the green light to come over, and Paul Dean and I swing by the house. We know it might be the last time we see him. He's in his chair, but he can speak, but not well. And I get down and have a little moment with him that I'll never forget. And it's Paul's turn. Paul gets down there, and he starts to talk to Coach about the end of practices and how we would run at the end of practice. And sometimes we'd talk him into shooting a free throw. And if he made the free throw we ran, which was most of the time, he would make that free throw and we'd have to run. But sometimes, every once in a while, he would miss it. Paul's reminding him about that, and Paul's down on a knee, and Coach is in his weak voice. But he gets this wry little smile on his face and a twinkle in his eye. And he says to Paul, you know that every time I missed that at the end of practice, it was on purpose, right? I was done with you guys. He had that till the end, so we're going to wrap it up. Speaking next will be Coaches Rothland and Mollerston. We're so proud that they're behind us. And people have always asked me, how patient of a man and good of a coach was Coach Ron Brown as I've been around? And I said, I was thinking about that and talking to Gary, and I go, well, now that I remember, my freshman year, freshman coach, young Larry Mollerstoon. How good of a coach was Coach Ron Brown? That freshman team led by young Coach Mollerstoon, our win total under Coach Mollerstoon, big 0-16 we went as freshmen. But Coach Brown was still a patient and good enough coach to mold Coach Mollerstoon into the man that he is today and the coach that he has become. That's how good of a man and a coach and a human being Ron Brown was. Sam and I couldn't figure out how to wrap up today. We didn't want to do it apart, so we're just going to do this together. Whose house?
I get the idea that people around here think that Ron Brown was interested in sports. Well, I want to tell you that I taught many, many years with Ron Brown, and he was interested in his students. He loved his subject, and he loved his students. And he did everything in the classroom that could have made them better. And I was really proud to be a part of that. In fact, he wanted them to be so well-rounded that he said, you go over to Jean's plays and you go to her musicals, and if you do, I'll give you double credit. And that's how he got people to look in all aspects of their lives. And always Janet came along, and he was a model because he attended himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Coach Mullerstoon, Coach Rothland, you're next. Welcome, guys.
Tim, did you just tell Larry and I 6 minutes? We're the only ones you told, right? I think we're the only ones, 3.5 each. Good afternoon. My name is Ed Rothland, and I was Ron's assistant coach for 9 years, and I like to think I was one of his many, many, many best friends. It's very hard to talk about somebody you love that had such a big impact on your life. But with me today to help me is my best friend Larry, also my emotional support person. You might know Larry as Larry Mullerstoon, Mr. Mullerstoon, Coach Mullerstoon. If you had him in the 4th grade, Mr. Mo. And if you played a lot of slow pitch with him, and I know there's a few of us in the room, Larry the Legend. Over the past few weeks and last night and today and for months to come, we're going to hear a lot of stories. And each story is going to be a little bit different, and they're going to be special to the person that tells them. But what I find is that the end of the story, the moral of the story, and the lesson we learn is very similar. I'm going to tell you my story when I first came to work for Coach Brown. I was 25 years old. That's a few years ago, isn't it? I was 25 years old. I was the head basketball coach at Adna High School at the time. I was blessed with some good athletes and good players, and so we did well. And we went to the state tournament and placed, and after that I thought maybe it would be time for me to look and maybe go to another level just to see how that would go. I'd been working Husky Hoop Camp for a couple of years with the Harshmans and Coach Brown's staff, and found out at Husky Hoop Camp that Coach LeBaron was retiring from teaching and coaching. And so that was my opening. And I took advantage of that. When I met with Coach Brown after getting the job, he told me that he'd been coaching and teaching for 25 years. And then I thought, gosh, most people retire at 30, right? And maybe in 5 years, someday, I could be the next head basketball coach. Yeah, 30, 35, 40, 45, you know how this goes, 50, 55 plus. I was not the next head basketball coach. Needless to say, I did make a little career path change in my career. But my end of the story, my lesson I learned, I came to Centralia to be a better basketball coach. Be the best basketball coach I could be, and learn from the best basketball coach, in my opinion. And I did. When I left, I was a better coach. But I also was a better teacher. I was a better leader. I was a better listener. I was a better motivator. I was a better friend. I was a better husband. I was a better father. And now a better grandfather. The influence Coach Brown had on my life and my career will never be forgotten.
My name's Larry Mullerstoon. I played for Coach Brown in 74, 75. I wasn't very good. Coach said I couldn't shoot, kind of like Gary Larson back in 87. But he believed in me, and I just played my heart out for him. I coached with Ron first of all, the first 2 years I ended up getting a job in Chehalis, neighboring town. And because Centralia didn't have any openings, and I coached freshmen the first year, and Chris might appreciate this, I went 0 for there too. But I keep telling Chris, I don't think we played 16 games. I think we were only 0 and 14, but we can check the book. Anyway, after that, I got a chance to come over to Centralia, and the same year Ed came, and I was just thrilled coming home. And anyway, I had a chance to coach with Coach Brown for 31 years, and in the best basketball program anywhere, bar none. With the Saturday basketball, the hoop camps, it was just a phenomenal job that Coach Brown did to organize a basketball program. Second of all, I'd like to thank the Brown family. I am so thankful and blessed to have become a part of your family. And Coach Brown has been such a huge influence in my life. Next to my father, the best. Just great father, great friend, great brother, and I'm really, really gonna miss him. When it came to basketball, he was the most organized guy. When I first got the job in the neighboring town, he's the one I went to get advice, and his practices were minute by minute. They were the most organized things you've ever seen, and he hand wrote them every day. And he still has every one of them from 56 years of coaching. And it really helped me. It didn't help me that first year. But eventually, I sandwiched that with my last year I coached in 2015. We went 20-0, so it was a pretty good run for them. I'm trying to follow directions, unlike the class of '79. I was so blessed with when Coach Brown finally came to me and asked me if I wanted to help out at hoop camp, and I was just over the moon to have a chance to work with Marv Harshman, Dave Harshman, Brad Jackson, RJ, Denny Houston, some unbelievable coaches that Coach Brown gathered to teach and coach our youth. And over the years, it was just a phenomenal 40-year experience. And the Saturday basketball that Coach Gill and myself and Ron ran for a long time, and Coach Brown ran it many years before I ever got to him. One of the last things I'm going to talk about is Coach Brown and I had lots of adventures. And one night after I'd played a doubleheader softball game at Boris Park, we had planned on going down to San Luis Obispo to a coach's clinic because we were going to improve our skills, or he thought I needed to improve mine. And I picked him up in my little '79 Ford Courier pickup that the driver's side door wouldn't close. So I let him drive because I was so tired, and we get just south of Portland, turning right on a curve, and the door flies open, and he can't figure out how to close it, so I have to reach across him and close it. And we get down to the clinic. We drove all the way through 20 hours. We get there, and we slept for a little while after that. And then we went to a couple classes. One of them was aerobics, and we're getting in the back of the room because we wanted to earn our credits. And we want to be at the back of the room, and there's all these people in front of us doing the aerobics, and we see this one guy. He's probably about Coach Brown's age, and he's just going crazy up there. He's got all the moves down and everything, and we're just we're in the back. We don't have to do anything. Well, we get outside, and the first thing this guy does is light up a cigarette. And we're saying, how does this guy do this? And it was a joke we had forever. We reminded each other of that. One other thing is we did a CPR class, and he and I were partners. And that was comical because, you know, right after you ask if they're, you okay? And, you know, you're trying to check their vitals, and Ron just stood up and says, you're going to die. Anyway, another highlight that the other guys haven't talked about very much are the fires. Coach Brown had a great outdoor fireplace built with a big screen TV that Lyle Overbay donated a TV to us, and we watched sporting events there and discussed coaching and just friendship, and they've been unbelievable over the years, and it was always nice to be first on the list for those fires when, you know, Chris Thomas kept saying, am I going to get to come to a fire? I says, you're on the list. In closing, I'm a little ticked off at Ron. He and I had made an agreement that he was going to speak at my memorial service because I know how great of a speaker he is, and I still love you, Ron. Really can't imagine life without you, my friend. He's been such a great influence and friend and mentor, and his legacy and memories and our great times together will go on forever. Thank you guys for showing up today.
Just real quick, before the girls come up and talk about their softball experience and memories with Coach Brown, I heard what an athlete this guy was. I don't care what it was, football, basketball, baseball, tennis. It goes on and on and on. So I'm sure some of those stories will be told. Coach Brown one time said, speaking of CPR and first aid, he said, if I ever go down on the floor, don't worry about mouth to mouth, just go foot to chest. Foot to chest. And I said, you got it, Coach. Now, from 1991, Aaron Erb and Charity Barr. Welcome, girls.
This fear of public speaking, it's legit. So I thought the old speech in the gym days were over, but here we are. What an honor for us. I'm going to go off script already, but I got a call from Tim Brown, Timmy, as Ron used to call him. But I was so honored and so excited. And then I hung up the phone with him, and I was so freaked out. And here we are again, not being able to say no to a Mr. Brown. So our 1991 softball team has a banner hanging right here in the gym. It is not on the academic wall, but it is actually right up there. We finished third at state in 90, and in 91 came back and won Centralia's first state championship of softball. I think it's their only one, too. It was a little unfinished business, as Ron would say. So being a state champion, how do I put this? It's kind of a big deal. So people kind of want to know you. So to this day, I try to work it into as many conversations as possible. And they'll ask me sometimes who our coach was. I'm like, oh, Ron Brown. Oh, no, he was a basketball coach. Okay, we get it. He was a basketball coach. So word on the street, he coached basketball, but he was also a softball coach. And I know everyone here knows he was so much more than a coach. I always thought it must be quite the transition from coaching boys in the winter to girls in the spring. Maybe he coached the girls to get a nice little break from the guys. Or maybe he coached the girls to realize how easy he had it with the guys. Because the boys weren't making him listen to Air Supply all the way to Aberdeen. It really had to be such a change of pace, though. He was so laid back with us. and I truly believe we got the rested, relaxed, and if possible, the more fun version of Coach Brown. There was a day that we gave him a pretty hard time about that. Told him maybe you should get a little mad once in a while, light a fire, get the team, maybe even yell, get pissed, right? Ladies, 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 that's what he called us. That's just not my style. Well, the next day at practice, he grabbed his bat like always, got us going with a little infield, outfield, and Rockin' Ron showed off a little velo and rocked a hardline drive right in the 6-hole. So hard. He then threw the bat and screamed at me, and I'm never gonna do this justice. What are you doing? You gotta get in front of those. Pure terror. The whole team froze. He then said, "Oh, is that kind of what you wanted me to do?" Gotcha. Fun fact on that story, Coach McCullough, his face proved he was not in on these shenanigans at all. And he wanted to cry like the rest of us. After that, we pretty much just let Coach Brown be himself, and we just rolled with the mellow. And his methods were one of a kind for sure. That man could speak volumes without speaking at all. One instance while I was playing shortstop in a game over at Borst, there was a ball that went through my legs. Very rare, but I glanced over to my right where Coach was standing in the dugout opening. No eye contact, just a slow shake of the head, eyes down. You gotta have those, ladies. Just loud enough for him to know I heard it. It was like a dagger to the heart. That was 1,000 times worse than being yelled at. He was just someone that you didn't want to disappoint. He made you want to win. He made you want to be a better athlete. He made you want to be a better person. And I've read so many great things about him over the past few weeks, but one stood out. Lyle actually had noted he made you feel like the most important person in the room, and he did. We had all spent so much of our lives being these giant Ron Brown fans, and he actually turned in to be all of our fans. Whenever we were blessed to cross paths with him, he was always asking about our lives, our kids, our families, and just about everything else he could think of. It was always heartfelt. He actually ran in, I'm off script again, but he would always run into my mom, and she would tell him, he would always go, "How's Aaron's son? How's he doing?" And she goes, "Oh, I think he's a better shortstop than Aaron was." And he goes, "Oh, I don't believe that for 1 second." So, he was just one of a kind, and I don't think there's ever going to be another like him. So, here's Charity.
They say there's no crying in baseball. And having had the unique experience of having played both baseball and softball, there may be some crying today, and it's okay. Like most kids, I knew of the legend of Coach Brown, and I personally saw him as the John Wooden of Washington State. A coach of great character and sportsmanship, a man of faith, and he knew how to create champions. Coach Brown would have a profound impact on my life as my softball coach. I grew up playing baseball with boys, starting in Little League, then Babe Ruth, and thanks to the varsity head coach, Mark Roberts, I had the privilege of playing 2 years of high school boys baseball on the C team. In 1990, my junior year, it was time for me to switch from boys baseball to girls softball. I've had the honor of playing baseball and softball for many amazing coaches in this area. I played baseball with and softball with some of the greatest athletes to come through this high school, and I'm blessed to call them all teammates. My first day of softball was quite a culture shock. I showed up to this little tiny field in long sleeves, baseball pants, and a baseball cap. Most of the girls were in t-shirts, tank tops, and shorts. And while warming up, there was the occasional mention of a boy's name, and he was usually one of my teammates from the season before. I smiled and thought, welcome to girls softball. Having always been pretty serious, Coach Brown pulled me aside and said, Charity, you just gotta loosen up and have some fun. That stuck with me, and it helped me immensely. That first season of softball, we set 2 state records. We won 17 straight games and 25 wins in a season, finishing third in state with a 25-2 record. We knew the work that we needed to put in and set a goal to win it all the next year. Coach Brown, Coach McCullough, and Coach Croston emphasized the team concept, and every player was important. Coach Brown taught us to be humble yet confident. He had an incredible gift for knowing how to extract the very best from every single player for the betterment of the team. In the 1991 season, a lot of people don't know this, but because of heavy rain, we had to play the entire state championship tournament in one day. With 4 ball games and rain delays, we were on and off the fields for over 12 hours, and our first game was 11 innings long. Coach Brown promised us that if we won the state championship, he would do cartwheels from third base coach's box to home plate. A little after midnight, Coach Brown fulfilled his promise and did cartwheels from third base to home. Aaron and I agree, they weren't pretty, but we still smile, and we still will remember that as long as we live. We hoisted that trophy with great pride as Centralia Tigers, achieving our goal to be state champions. In 2 seasons, we amassed another state record. We won 49 games and only lost 5. Of the 15 players on varsity, 8 of us went on to coach, even if it was our own kids. The legacy of Coach Brown continues on through all of us as we teach the fun, character building, goal setting, care for our players, and the key team concept of athletics that Coach taught us. Coach Brown always made sure to show us that even after all the years, he still cared about us and how were we doing, as Aaron had shared. Coach Brown was genuine, kind, and thoughtful. One of my most special treasures is not a plaque with my name on it. It's a Christmas card that Coach Brown sent to me. I was a homesick Navy wife stationed in Virginia, 3,000 miles from home, from Centralia. He gave me some encouraging words and a little piece of home. We are eternally grateful for Coach Brown, his investment in us, his amazing example to lead, to care, to believe, and the legacy of being forever state champions.
To quote a favorite show, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. And I think that probably speaks for most of us. Because, you know, we were right there living them. Good friends, championship season, the best of times, and a legend right there in front of us leading the way. And we just didn't quite know the magnitude of that quite yet. But we do now. To the Brown family, I love Ron Brown so much. Our whole team did. Actually, I'm pretty sure the whole town did. Thank you so much for this honor of letting us share just a little bit about your husband, your dad, your grandpa. What a cool grandpa he probably was. I was thinking of. But mostly, thank you for sharing him with us for so many years. I think we're all better for it. Thank you.
Okay, get your stopwatch out. Before the grandkids come up, family friend. If anybody's going to represent family friend in this community and with the Brown family, it is Mr. Hal Gronseth. Hal.
I'm going to change the pace just a little bit today. I feel like I have to introduce myself. My name is Hal Gronseth. If you look on the program, I'm the only one not listed as an assistant coach or a former player. Okay? That's because I'm the only one speaking that was cut by Ron Brown prior to the 1979 season. And yeah, that cut allowed them, I think, to win the state championship. Ron Brown started his head coaching career the year I was born. My dad, Mort, was the athletic director. He and Ron Brown worked together and built a friendship that lasted until my dad's death in 2001. They were both Tigers. Few people have been more influential and more passionate about the Centralia Tigers than those two men. I wrote that, and then I thought, boy, the guy that introduced me has to be mentioned in that sentence as well. Their friendship included working together in student government, helping each other remodel their homes. They have many stories about that. Fishing with their children and celebrating the many Tiger wins in the many sports that Coach Brown coached. Dad replaced Ron one year as the head baseball coach when Ron served in the National Guard. My siblings and I have great memories of their friendship. My sister Mary Kay got her first job teaching in Forks, Washington, Ron's alma mater. Ron requested that Dad bring Mary Kay over to their house. He met her at the front door in his Letterman's jacket, singing the Forks fight song. That is just typical Ron Brown right there. My teaching career started in Rochester, and Francine and I occasionally would come over to watch Centralia basketball. Lewis, I mentioned that we came to watch Centralia basketball, but my wife came over to watch you men. We sat right over here, and Ron would come out towards the end of the JV game, waiting for the varsity game to start. And he and Francine would always start conversations. Those conversations were fun, and Francine's love of Centralia started with Ron Brown. I was hired to teach in Centralia in 1990, and we taught together for 4 or 5 years before he retired. I have 4 children who were the 3rd generation to be impacted by Ron, and they would all have great stories and great memories of him. Because I was cut, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ron Brown in the classroom. Ron taught U.S. history and civics in Centralia for 34 years. I loved his teaching style. He was a storyteller, and I loved when he used his vast knowledge to tell presidential stories. Many of you know Mr. Brown because he was your history teacher. His dynamic personality drew students to him both inside and outside the classroom. His presidential pictures in the front of the classroom were my very favorite. He would move from picture to picture as he shared stories about each one. My favorite was his personal story about the day Franklin Roosevelt died in 1945. He was an 11-year-old playing outside on the only sunny day of the year in Forks. He heard on the radio that Roosevelt had died. He was excited to go tell his mom. He knew that she would be thrilled to hear it because they had campaigned against him the prior year. When she heard the news, she cried. The 11-year-old boy learned that just because you disagreed with somebody politically didn't mean you wished them ill privately. That lesson needs to be taught today. He was known for collecting quotations and displaying them in his classroom. My favorite quote that he had up there was a Mark Twain quote that hung just above the classroom door. "Let us so endeavor to live that when we come to die, even the undertaker will be sad." Ron Brown lived that. I know many of you saw that quote. Ron Brown had incredible strengths, but updating the walls in his classroom was not one of them. That quote was in his room for many, many years. Besides teaching and coaching, you may remember him supervising homecoming, serving as senior class advisor, and especially selling donuts during morning break. Many of you think of the East Coast when you think when Ron Brown comes to mind. He took nearly 600 Centralia students to the East Coast from 1977 until 2006. Whether he was out walking all of us from Washington, D.C., in Washington, D.C., and New York City, sneaking us into the side of the U.S. Capitol, trying to get 20 high school students on a New York subway at the same time, taking us to our first Broadway play, or singing Give My Regards to Broadway in the middle of Times Square. He made sure each trip was a highlight of our high school career. I traveled with him in 1979 as a senior, and then for another 18 years as his assistant. I never go a month without someone talking to me about the East Coast trip. We spent hours each year organizing the trip, and then talked history, coaching, teaching, faith, politics, and many other topics during our time together on the trip. It became a tradition that each year I would ask him, we talked about the basketball season and the football seasons too between that year. It became a tradition that I would ask him, hey, could I have made the team this year? Almost every year he would say, Hal, I don't think so. 2 or 3 years, he told me that he thought he had a spot that he could use me. And 1 year, he was just waiting for me to ask the question. And he looked at me and said, I would have loved to have had you. I'm not going to share that year because I don't want to embarrass anybody. He always said that outside of coaching, those trips were that were the highlights of his career. And I know that anybody that went on that trip would agree. Ron and I split wood, we trimmed trees, we roofed his outbuildings, and I think I took him to the emergency room 3 times. We love to talk politics and solve the world problems. When President Biden announced that he was not running for president again, I literally grabbed my phone and opened it up, ready to call Ron Brown. Ron became less mobile in the last months of his life, but he never lost his memory. He never lost his quick-witted sense of humor or his passion for people. I will treasure my visits with him over the past couple of years. I would walk through the garage door, past his truck. I would knock on the door and walk in as I heard, come in, come on in. Ron would be sitting in his chair, surrounded by mail, yearbooks, and his basketball statistics. He was ready for anything. I don't think I ever left Ron and Janet's home without hearing about how grateful he was for his family. Alyssa, David, Tim, and Julie, you were amazing. Your spouses and your children were an unbelievable blessing to your dad and grandpa. Ron, I miss you already. I know I joked about the program at the beginning, but being one of your friends has been one of my great honors and joys of my life. Thank you.
last but certainly not least, the grandchildren. Come on up, guys.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jake Peterson. This is my sister, Abby Peterson, my cousin, Landon Kaut, and our grandfather is the legendary Ron Brown. What an honor it is to speak today and share with you how much my grandpa means to me as we celebrate the life of an outstanding man. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the entire Brown family. We all have very special connections with my grandfather, and he brought so much joy to our lives. I would also like to tell my grandmother, Janet Brown, how much I love you, and how blessed I feel to be your grandson. Your marriage and partnership with Grandpa is a thing of beauty. I will forever cherish my memories shared with you and Grandpa. Next, I would like to acknowledge the entire Tiger family. What an incredible turnout. I'm not from Centralia, but I humbly stand before you all as an honorary member of the Tiger community. I participated in not one, but 2 Centralia Tiger basketball camps in my youth. And I just wanted to take the time to thank everyone for coming to honor my grandfather. I've had the pleasure of meeting several of you over the years, and it's truly amazing to witness the support of the Tiger community. As I reflect on my relationship with my grandpa and his impact on my life, a lot comes to mind. Attempting to encapsulate what he means to me in a short speech is an impossible endeavor, just the same as I'm sure everyone here today would feel. But I think what sticks out to me is his sense of humor. Ron Brown was a funny man. He was clever and witty and an expert in sarcasm. The comedic side of him was likely a big reason why everyone loved him and he had so many friends. My grandfather's personality really sparkled with his charisma and confidence, which is something I always looked up to as a kid and admired. Sometimes, however, as a young grandchild who valued every minute spent with him, I became a little protective of our time together. I learned that you can't take Ron Brown anywhere, but you can't take Ron Brown nowhere either. A quick trip to the grocery store was easily and regularly delayed by a 20-minute catch-up with a former player, coach, neighbor, or old friend. You also couldn't take them in anywhere or nowhere either, considering all of his friends would just show up at his house unannounced. Or give him a call, which he would always answer, robbing me of further precious time with him as they discussed all things Centralia basketball. Over time, however, these experiences developed into an appreciation for just how beloved he was in his community. I became very proud to be a grandson of Ron Brown, a man who created endless, meaningful personal connections and a lasting legacy of love and respect for his city. I have so many fond memories and will miss everything about my grandfather, his Pacific Northwest dialect as a resident of Washington, hearing him say, "I'll be darned," in conversation, his jokes and effervescent personality, his big smile and notorious cackle of a laugh to clearly insinuate he was pulling your leg in the most endearing way. His deep knowledge and passion for U.S. history. Of course, I find it a little poetic that he passed just after the 4th of July, able to experience one final celebration of American independence. One thing I won't miss is his vile collection of R&R whiskey. You know, that's a drink I always thought for which your taste matures into nicer and more expensive quality as you age, but not for Ron Brown. Splash that into some Pepsi and he might lead you to believe it's a delicacy. I could go on and on about the little details of what made him unique and special, but if I were to summarize, he was just an awesome guy to be around. I would like to conclude my speech with a quote. Back in February 2021, he gifted me a modest red folder. On the first page, he wrote, "Jake, I wanted you to have my collection of quotes. I hope you enjoy them as I did in gathering them. Maybe they will remind you of me in later years when I'm long gone. Keep up challenging yourself. Love, Grandpa Brown. Within this red folder are dozens upon dozens of encouraging quotes, one of which is less of a quote, but rather a definition as listed in Webster's dictionary. A hero is a central figure in any important event or period, admired and honored for courage, outstanding nobility of character, exploits, and achievements, and regarded as an ideal or model. If the dictionary is ever looking to list examples with their definitions, they can look no further than Ron Brown, who was a hero to me and countless others. I love you forever, Grandpa. Thank you.
Hello. As Jake introduced me, my name is Abby, one of the other grandchildren. Although he did miss an important detail in introducing me, yes, if you were wondering or questioning, I am in fact the favorite grandchild. Knowing my grandpa, I'm confident that he would want today to be about joy and celebrating his life. However, I'm by no means clearly indicating that I can hold myself together during this speech. Standing up here today, I feel extremely lucky to be able to share some of the moments and memories with my grandpa that will forever live in my heart. My grandpa was my favorite person. Sorry. He embodied everything that one aspires to be. He was kind and respectful. He was hardworking and humble. He was loving and loyal. All the while, my grandpa was just fun. His zest and passion for life was infectious. I don't think anyone in this room can say that they've walked away from a conversation with my grandpa without feeling a little bit better. He made your bad days better, your good days great, and your best days who you would want to share them with. Ever since I can remember, he was always someone I looked up to tremendously. Whether it was his 50-plus years of coaching, his willingness to always take you for one last scooter ride in his backyard, or sharing his much sought-after pickle and Tom and Jerry cocktail recipe. I loved being able to share and boast to everyone about how remarkable of a man he was and how meaningful he was to me, not only to me and my family, but to his entire community. Being able to witness his impact on others through his coaching, his teaching, or his infamous pool and bonfire parties was so special. It is difficult to truly express the love I have for my grandpa. I feel so blessed to have been raised by such supportive grandparents and surrounded by so much love that he and Grandma shared with each other. The way that he treated my grandma over the years is everything one hopes to have with their significant other. A few months ago, I had asked them what they thought the secret was to a successful marriage of over 60 years together. They both agreed on the same answer: laughter. I know today will be full of laughter and love, sharing the exceptional life of my grandfather. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Landon Kaut. While many of you called Ron Brown Coach, I had the privilege of calling him Grandpa. Now, being Ron's grandson was not always easy. As my cousin Jake just touched on, I found it to be nearly impossible to go anywhere in public with him, as he would always see a former player or old friend wanting to catch up. Even worse was trying to have a conversation with him in his own home, as every 5 minutes his phone would ring with someone wanting to see how he was doing. It was incredible to see just how many people my grandpa had a positive impact on. And every time that phone would ring, I would see his face light up as he truly cherished every relationship he had built over the years and cared what was happening in people's lives. Some of my fondest memories with my grandpa include making our famous homemade pickles, family camping trips to Claylock, and all the time we spent at the high school together. Whether that was us playing basketball in the gym or during the holidays when my grandpa would bring all the grandkids to the high school to ride scooters through the hallways together. Being a coach and being a grandpa are very similar in ways. Both require you to pass on your knowledge and life lessons. Both require you to push the younger generations to be better. Both require you to show your kids that you care about them. My grandpa somehow managed to be great at both. Basketball was always something that my grandpa and I could bond over. Ever since I was little, I was attending Tiger basketball games. It was the coolest thing for me to see my grandpa out there coaching. I would always hang over the edge of the bleachers where the team walks out so that I could wave to my grandpa as he walked by. I started playing at a very young age, as you could imagine, and just finished my second year of college ball. My grandpa helped teach me the basics from a young age and would consistently ask me if I wanted to get in the gym as I grew up. Once I started playing in high school and college, he would call me after each game asking me how my team did, how I played, and most importantly, what can I do better? My grandpa once wrote, and Bob Peters used the same quote as me, so great minds must think alike. A full life is not determined by how long you live, but by how well. Grandpa, you had an incredible impact on so many people, especially me. You are the kindest, hardest working person I've ever known. You have been my hero since I was little and will be for the rest of my life. Grandpa, I love you. You will forever be my hero.
Okay, if you notice in the program, there's nothing after grandchildren. So I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with, I'm 74 years old and I need to use the restroom. Okay, so with that, as we, and I'm not sure what my good friend Hen Vu is having to do. It looks to me like we did not have to use the Performing Arts Center, so I'm sure he has the bleachers in by now. But if he doesn't have the bleachers in, I was told to tell you to stand, fellowship with each other for 5-10 minutes, and then feel free to wander through the Performing Arts Center. And then on the other side is the old Classitorium, which is now the Commons. And okay. There's a picture up there. Please don't throw eggs. Anyway, to get to when you go through the doors, turn right, and it's the memorabilia section that is just amazing. If I did not stand here and say this, the amazing part about looking at those stats over year after year after year after year, I couldn't do it. He did it as close to perfection as possible. And then at one day, Max Waring came up to him and said, I want to help you take what Brenda Penman and Tim Penman and Todd Penman and Ray McDermott and Randy Garland had done over the years, and we want to compile all those things. And Coach Brown said, that's impossible. You can't do that. Do you realize how much has gone into this? And Max Waring said, we're going to do it. And so with that followed up with what you heard Chris Thomas say. Be honored to go back there in that memorabilia section and look at some of those things. That there's a case that has all 56 years of scorebooks in it. I went to 1967, 68, found my good friend Mark Maxfield, and he's still mad that they lost 4 times to this little punk town, Centralia, from Mount Tahoma and Tacoma. So my thing is done. God bless you guys. Please stay. Remember, the bathrooms are there. They're there. They're there, and they're in the Commons. Because if I beat you first, forgive me. God bless you guys, and thank you so much. Yes.